Wait a minute, how could a blind person possibly solve criminal cases that terrified the police and were considered impossible? Come on, let's find out. Before I start with the movie, I need you to focus really hard, because the killer is someone you would never expect at all. And anyone who comes to your mind, just consider them innocent. Our story begins on a rainy night, shrouded in complete darkness. The electricity was out, and we couldn't see anything except by the flashes of lightning. And we see a woman named Sarah standing alone, and she's standing inside a house, shouting at one of the corners of the room. Because this woman feels like there's someone else in the house with her playing music. Sarah is a blind girl who lost her sight a year ago, and this was due to a hereditary disease. Now we see Sarah walking, leaning against the walls of the house. She reached the basement and started following the sound she was hearing. She climbed onto a small chair, put her head inside the noose, and kept talking to this person as if she knew them. Suddenly, the killer pushes the chair, causing Sarah to hang herself, and this was her last breath. She tried to free herself, but unfortunately she died. At the same time, her twin Julia, while at work, felt a choking sensation around her neck and collapsed to the ground, but her colleagues helped her. So Julia feels that her sister Sarah is in danger, and she travels with her husband Isaac to her sister's city. Here, we learn that Julia and Sarah have been out of contact for exactly 6 months, and when they arrive, she doesn't open the door for them. So Isaac decides to break the window, and they enter the house. And they find the house without electricity. And while they're searching for her, Isaac notices the basement door is slightly open, which piques his curiosity. He goes down to the basement and finds Sarah there, hanging from a rope. When Julia tries to go down to see, Isaac stops her and refuses to let her see her sister in that state. So she became extremely worried and scared for her sister, and Isaac calls the police to inform them. And when they arrive, they transport the body. Then the detective tells them, the forensic doctor confirms that she died by hanging, but it's our duty to find out the reason. She had a disease that caused progressive loss of vision. So Isaac nodded and said yes, and told him, my wife Julia has this disease as well, but Sarah lost her sight a year ago, and she was waiting for a donor so she could regain her vision. Then the detective said to him, maybe she killed herself because she couldn't find anyone to donate to her, and she felt depressed. Julia kept crying over her sister, and Isaac was trying to comfort her, and he told her, stress can trigger a blindness episode for you. Please just forget about it. Julia started to feel a strange sensation, and she felt that her sister didn't die that easily, and that there was a story behind this incident. While searching through Sarah's belongings, Julia hears the voice of a stranger and senses someone's presence with them inside the house. She scurries away, but after a few seconds, it's just Isaac. So he calms her down and says to her, it's me, don't be afraid. The next morning, we see Julia at the cemetery with her husband, when a stranger approaches and gives her flowers, then says to her, my name is Blasco, I'm Mrs. Sarah's neighbor. My daughter Leah and I would like to invite you. But Leah is very sad and stayed in the car. Julia accepts the flowers from him and continues to cry over her sister's coffin, when suddenly she feels a hand on her shoulder and she thinks it must be Isaac. But when she looks to the other side, she sees Isaac standing over there next to the man. So who was that person behind her? At this point, Julia gets scared and starts to panic and feel terrified, and she felt like someone was watching and following her. And when the detective said, we only found Sarah's fingerprints, at the scene there is no evidence of any murder having taken place. And Sarah has no contact with anyone. And if you want to make sure, ask her neighbor, Grandma Soledad. This grandma had become close to her recently, so Julia quickly gets up and goes to see this grandma. And the detective tells her, there's a rope in the backyard, follow it and it will lead you to her house. And indeed, Julia follows this rope, and this rope was made by Sarah in the past so she could lean on it and reach her neighbors. When Julia arrives at Grandma Soledad's house, she enters the house without permission, because she found the door open. So she apologized for entering the house like that without permission, and she tells her, I'm Julia, Sarah's sister. And now we find out that Mrs. Soledad is also blind. She can't see and has lost her sense of sight. So she tells Julia, it's okay, come in. Sarah became my friend when she started to lose her sight. And recently she started going to the center for the blind, which is called the Bowman Center. So she found her friends there and left me. When Julia heard about this center, she called a taxi and went there to ask about Sarah. She asked at the information desk about Sarah's friends, and the receptionist told her, go down to the lower floor and you'll see them. When she went in, she saw everyone in the changing room, and they were talking about Sarah, but they hadn't seen her because they had lost their sight. One of them said that maybe she killed herself because of her boyfriend, The other girls were shocked. Could Sarah really have a boyfriend? Julia was standing among them without making a sound, listening in on their conversation. And one of them said, yes, she has a boyfriend and they meet up in the city of Bella Vista. At that moment, one of them screamed and said, Sarah's scent is here. All the girls got scared and started searching around. And they began grabbing onto Julia. Julia decided to clear her name and said, I'm Sarah's sister and I didn't want to interrupt your conversation. But one of the girls said to her, there's a man here with you. Julia was surprised and told her, no, I'm here alone. But when she turned around, she actually saw traces of someone behind her. Now it's clear that Julia is the next victim. Julia started running and searching for this man, but he kept escaping from her. This man was trying to take a picture of her, and suddenly he disappeared into the darkness. Julia had a panic attack from fear and anxiety, and unfortunately, she lost part of her vision and collapsed to the ground. People came over to help her, but Julia hid this from Isaac. But he found out and asked her, where were you? I asked Soledad about you, and she said you left a long time ago. So Julia explained the situation to him and told him about the killer who was chasing her. Dear viewer, I'm sure you want to know the reason why the killer is after Julia, right? This serial killer hates anyone who investigates him, so Julia was looking for him to bring him to justice. But he might kill her just to make sure she doesn't find out anything about him. Now, do you understand the reason? Come and see the real shock. After that, we see Isaac getting angry and packing their things, and they go to travel to a nearby city called Bella Vista. And this city was Julia's suggestion, so they arrived there, specifically at an old abandoned hotel. But Julia's goal is far from luxury. She wanted to look for her sister Sarah's reservation at this hotel. And when the staff check the reservations under that name, all the data suddenly gets deleted. The staff tell her to go to the hotel restaurant. There must be camera recordings there. And indeed, Julia takes Isaac and they have lunch there. And when she asks the waiter about her sister Sarah, they tell her, we saw her because her eyes were bandaged. With this information, Julia realized that her sister had undergone the operation and that it hadn't succeeded. Isaac already knew this, but he didn't tell her out of concern for her. But Julia gets angry at her husband and cries because he lied to her. And when she leaves, she crashes into a car. Fortunately, she was okay. From this incident, Isaac realized that she had lost a significant part of her eyesight. The next day, an old hotel employee comes and offers Julia his condolences for her sister Sarah's death. He tells her, my name is Chris Polo. I'm the janitor here. So when I was cleaning Mrs. Sarah's room, I found a key she had forgotten. And this key might be useful to you. So Julia goes with him to the basement to get the key. She starts asking about the description of the man who was with Sarah. He tells her that this man is quiet and doesn't have any distinctive features, but there is a great anger in his eyes. And I remember he parked his car 2 blocks away inside the garage, and there are cameras there that you can check. But be careful. So Julia leaves the place and tells Isaac everything the old man told her. He gets angry with her and tells her to drop the subject of the killer. Dear viewer, at this point I started to suspect that the killer is Isaac himself. Up to here, tell me who you suspect. After that, Julia insisted on checking the surveillance videos. So Isaac goes down alone, angry at all her actions, because she's putting herself in danger. So he decided to go himself, and he tells her, wait here, I'll bring it. But Isaac takes a long time. And when Julia goes down to ask about him, they tell her that he came a while ago, took the tape, and left. So Julia becomes worried about her husband. Just a few seconds later, the camera and electricity wires are cut. The situation was suspicious, strange, and frightening. Who is behind all of this? At this point, Julia decided to call the police and report her husband's disappearance. So the detective arrives, and they start to suspect her husband is the culprit. In another scene, we see Chris Polo swimming, but there was someone else with him inside the room. And he cuts the electrical wires, locks him in the bathroom, and kills the old man with deadly electric shocks. So the detective started asking Julia, how are we supposed to know what the criminal looks like if you haven't even seen him? So Julia took them to Chris Polo because he was the only one who knew what he looked like. But she is shocked to find that Chris Polo is dead, so she became certain that this killer is invisible. After the detectives started investigating Chris Polo's incident, the old man, they discovered that it was just an accident and there were no fingerprints or eyewitnesses. So Julia goes to get her eyesight checked by the doctor, and the doctor tells her that she needs surgery as soon as possible because her eyesight has become weak. And in less than a month, she will lose her vision completely. So here, Julia was sitting with her neighbor Soledad while she was waiting for her husband to return. But the detective meets her and tells her that they haven't found any trace of Isaac. And right now, all suspicion is directed at him, because he disappeared and maybe he ran away with the security camera footage. and maybe he is actually Sarah's lover, and he is the one who killed her. But at that moment, a police officer arrives and informs the detective that the lights in Sarah's house are on. So Julia and the detective quickly get up and head to the house. And when they arrive in the neighborhood, the power goes out for everyone. But the detective gets out, and so does Julia. And both of them start searching. Julia goes down to the basement, hears a sound, and senses the presence of a strange man there. Meanwhile, the detective was searching upstairs, and when he comes down, he sees something strange hanging from a rope. And unfortunately, we see Isaac's body. He has also been killed, and he was murdered in the same brutal way, meaning he was hanged just like Sarah. And now we can rule out Isaac as the criminal. And remember, at the beginning I told you, anyone you suspect, consider them innocent. Here, we need you to pay close attention. In these terrifying moments, Julia has a blindness attack that makes her lose her sight completely, and she can't see Isaac. But she hears the news and is devastated about her husband, and we see her in the hospital signing for an eye transplant surgery because they found a donor for her. After the surgery was done, her eyes were covered with bandages, and the doctor ordered her not to remove the bandages for 2 weeks no matter what, because if she removed them, the surgery might fail. So Julia refused to stay in the hospital, and she wanted to go home, and the doctor asked that she have at least a daily nurse with her, so they could monitor her condition and change the bandages, and indeed, she agreed. Now she moved to her sister Sarah's house because it was close to her, and the distinctive key we saw at the beginning of the movie doesn't open any lock in Sarah's house. So what does this key open? After that, we see Julia waiting for the nurse, so she opens the door for him, and he tells her, "I'm the nurse, Ivan." Ivan starts dressing her wounds, and he gives her a call device to use whenever she needs it. Now we see Julia starting to have a lot of nightmares, so she wakes up and hears strange, real noises inside the house, as if someone is walking with her. So she calls Ivan using the call device, and he starts describing the house to her in detail so she can follow the steps and get outside. As a viewer, don't you feel like there's something off about this? I mean, how does a nurse memorize the entire layout of the house and the way out in just one day? How does that even happen? Come on, let's continue. Ivan arrives at the house and hugs Julia, reassuring her that there's no one here, and he closes the windows with iron covers so that no one can enter the house easily. Then he trains Julia to walk inside the house. And when he's about to leave, Julia asks him to stay with her that night. But he apologizes to her and tells her, "I can't stay." He says, "Let's just have a drink together and then I'll go." While they're talking, Julia touches Ivan's hand, and Ivan starts to feel something for Julia, but he resists these feelings, so he leaves the place. But Julia apologizes to him. That night, Julia begins her journey with terrible nightmares, and unfortunately, there was someone next to her while she was sleeping, so she started to sense his presence, and she quickly woke up at the last moment and escaped from him. So she ran out through the backyard, and she was screaming to the neighbors, telling them, "Help me! There's someone who wants to kill me." But Blasco, her neighbor, Leah's father, whom we saw at the beginning of the video, he started to help her and brought her into the house. And he began to dry her off because Julia was soaked from the rain, and he tried to get closer to her, but she asked him to help her. But he ignored her and started acting on his damn desires. So here, she asks him for some water. So when he went to get her the water, Julia escaped from Blasco's house, and she called out to Ivan using the intercom, so he came quickly and took her home. After that, Ivan went and got her a bed so she could sleep on it. But Julia heard the window opening, so she got scared and went to close it. And suddenly, she felt the presence of a girl there. Yes, dear viewer, this movie is a mystery, but I promise you the ending will shock you. And this girl is Leah, the one we saw at the beginning of the movie, and she came to warn Julia, telling her that she's having nightmares just like Sarah did before she died, and that there's a monster chasing her to take her eyes, just like it did with Sarah. And this monster is your nurse. So here, Julia got scared because Leah's father had tried to get close to her before, and she thinks he's the reason for all this talk. But Leah told her, no, this nurse is the reason. He wants to make you sleep so he can perform the operation he wants. And the key that doesn't open anything in Sarah's house is actually the key to this man's house. So Leah hides under the hedgehog because Ivan has entered the room, and indeed Ivan's key looks just like Sarah's distinctive key, and when Julia asks him to see the key, he tells her, "I'll go get myself some tea," just to change the subject. So Leah asks Julia to open her eyes and look at the board that Ivan has set up with plans and photos of her. Julia gets nervous and goes to the bathroom to remove the bandage. And when she opens her eyes and comes out of the bathroom, she actually sees planning boards with her photos and photos of Sarah, the victim. She was certain then that Ivan was the killer. And here, Julia witnesses the most terrifying scene yet. She sees Leah murdered and hanging on the wall because the killer discovered her while she was in the bathroom. After that, Ivan arrives and sees Julia crying. Ivan gets flustered and starts asking Julia, saying to her, "Why are you crying?" And Julia says to him, "There was a girl here named Leah who told me to remove the bandage, and when I took it off, I couldn't see anything." But Ivan doesn't believe her and gives her an eye test with the same knife he used to kill Leah. But Julia was strong and didn't even blink in front of him, and she passed the test. So Ivan was convinced that the operation had failed. So he made her some tea and put a sedative in it. But when Julia saw him, she switched the cups. But he was very clever and noticed what she did. Julia wanted to go to the hospital, but Ivan refused and told her, "Come with me." So he took her to the freezer and asked her to open it. So he started watching her. And when Julia opened the freezer, she saw the body of the real nurse Ivan. So this killer had impersonated the nurse to get close to Julia. And Julia's reaction was that she screamed from the sight, and the killer was sure that she could see. So he forcibly closed her eyes and took her with him to the car, and there her eyes started burning because her blindness attack came back. The killer started to open her eyes and get out of the car, but she refused to get out and began to act smartly. So she locked the car doors from the inside. Julia quickly acted and escaped with the car to a closed place. After that, she ran to Soledad's house, followed the tied rope, and went inside to her. And she asks her to call the police. But Soledad sees the killer, and it turns out to be her son, Angel. So she refuses to help Julia and hits Julia on the head. And she says to her son, "I've missed you so much. Why did you leave me?" So now, dear viewer, we understand that Sarah's neighbor, Soledad, had suffered from temporary blindness but later regained her sight, and her son left her ever since she got this illness. So Angel fell in love with Sarah, but Sarah rejected him and he became mentally ill and destroyed her eyes. And up until now, he still feels he has feelings for Julia and wants her to remain blind so that she stays with him and doesn't reject him. But Angel is mentally ill, so he injected his mother with a treatment that destroyed her optic nerve. And after these bloody scenes, we see Julia regaining consciousness and finding herself in the basement with Angel. So Angel gives her a choice between death or living with him. She rejected his love and chose to kill herself. But she couldn't do it and collapsed into his arms. So he thought that Julia had accepted his love, but she pulled the knife close to her and stabbed him in the leg. Julia escaped from the basement and locked the basement door behind him, but Angel resisted and came after her. And in those seconds, Julia called the police and told them to come quickly. But suddenly the call was cut off. Angel was trying to kill Julia, but she cut the electricity to the whole house so he wouldn't be able to see her. But the camera flash was still on. Angel approached Julia and made her fall to the ground. And in that final moment, Angel raised the knife to kill her. But Julia grabbed the camera and blocked the knife strike with it. At this point, the police arrive and arrest Angel. But Angel decided to kill himself rather than surrender to prison. And indeed, he killed himself with the knife. After this scene, we understand that these psychological illnesses can lead a person to ruin, just like what happened to Angel. The question here is, as a viewer, do you know people who were rejected by those they loved and ended up causing big problems? Write your experience in the comments. Now, we see Julia as she says goodbye to her husband Isaac, because she requested that he not be buried until she could see him with her own eyes, and she is surprised to find out that Isaac was the one who donated his eyes to her, so she cries for him at that moment. And because of these incidents that Julia went through, she starts having episodes that make her lose her sight completely. And dear viewer, everything you've seen and heard is from the movie Julia's Eyes.